ongoing discussions today. Can everybody hear me all right? Should I share screen?
Open it already?
Yeah, it's open here. So maybe
Okay, great.
full screen. There you go. Thank you. Okay. So, Decision to Leave is a 2022 South Korean film directed by Park Chan-wook with an original screenplay co-written by the director and Chung Seok-young. The film's dialogue incorporates not only Korean, but also written and spoken Chinese and several English words. The plot follows a Korean detective, Hae-jun, who finds himself attracted to the widow formerly married to a victim in his case. The widow, Seore, is a Chinese immigrant who has lived in Korea with her late husband, learning and using advanced Korean. As he attempts to solve the mystery surrounding the late husband's death, Hae-jun realizes that the murderer is the wife, Seore, whom he has already developed romantic feelings for. But with the case already closed as a suicide, Hae-jun leaves Seore, telling her to throw the evidence of the murder, which is a phone, in the sea, someplace deep where no one can find it. After a series of intricate events, Seore takes an action that leads to the death of two more individuals, including her new husband, Ho-shin, and buries her own body in the sand next to the sea, permanently leaving Hae-jun with traces of unresolved mystery intertwined with language. I emphasize the last phrase because the film thematizes elements of language such as figurative expressions, wordplay, dictionary definitions, second language acquisition, multilingualism, and paralingual forms of communication through conversations and on-screen texts, with references also to the limitations of language, including those in monolingual contexts. The English subtitles from the distributor and streaming platform Mubi, where the film has become the website's most streamed film in North America to date, curiously inverse the aforementioned themes in the English subtitles through various changes. Perhaps as another side to what is lost in translation, the film subtitles incorporate substitutions that do not lexically correlate to the original, but engage fragments of additional information relevant to the narrative arc. At the same time, such subtitles eliminate an air of subtlety linked to the atmospheric or the allegorical elements tied to the film's themes, and also formal expressions of insecurity and instability. I view the subtitle translator as one who steps stones over an unfathomable river of shifting cultural codes to safely arrive at a destination catered to and determined by the linguistic and cultural competency of the viewer. And with the limitations in subtitles in cinema, with the limitations in translations in cinema, perhaps, subtitles exist, in my opinion, as paratextual forms without a semantic paradigm, and that these subtitles at times reveal more information about the film's thematic elements in the narrative rather than less. But that also results in a reduction of poetic subtlety in this film's case, especially. First, the film explores such possibilities of interpretations through Hae-jun as he realizes by the end of the film that he must reassess and apprehend the way he expresses his own interiority, such as his emotions, in his native language. To portray his sense of alienation from Korean, the film equates Hae-jun's gestures in these moments to Seore's process of learning, studying, and practicing Korean as a non-native speaker. In the film, Seore practices Korean by watching period dramas containing pre-modern Korean. In one scene, Hae-jun's observations of Seore during a stakeout play as an audio recording. Watching TV dramas again, talks to herself while watching. Is it those period dramas that make her speech so classical? Indeed, throughout the film, Seore watches dramas of different genres, repeating the phrases out loud and integrating them into real-life scenarios. She poetically reproduces words adopted from fictional works often set in different time periods, establishing her own system of communication based on forms of expression taken from media. Toward the end of the film, however, Haejun performs the same action when attempting to figure out Seoda's interpretation of his own words. For her, had meant that he loves her, expressed in different words. When Seoda tells Haejun that she liked listening to the recording of him telling her that he loves her, both Haejun and the audience, including the readers of subtitles, are spurred to recollect if there was ever a time in the film they heard or read those exact words in their respective languages. Is there a way to sorry about that. It is only when he attentively re-listens to the recording of his words through Seoda's smartphone that Haejun realizes that his words telling her to throw the evidence, the phone, in the sea was his way of telling her that he loves her. In this scene, Haejun listens to the recording of his own voice and talks to himself by repeating the phrase out loud, identical to the way Seoda slowly practices her Korean, relying on another form of media to learn not only the words, but also the formal context in which they can be used. When he begins to play the recording through Seoda's smartphone, the film also displays the moving images of Haejun saying the words in the recording by replaying the exact scene from the film shown earlier and freezing the images when Haejun pauses the recording. It is as if the audience is watching Haejun watching a drama of himself from the movie, captured and displayed through a smartphone, a common streaming device that one can easily pause and replay. And this creates many layers of meta elements. As the scene likens this process to Seoda's efforts in second language acquisition, the film parallels the use of portable media and cultural content as a reflection of one's primary use of language based on context and subjectivity. In an attempt to unveil information about certain culture-specific elements, the subtitles also quickly reveal information at intervals different from the original, which removes the existing aspects of what is sometimes hidden in the original content, but delivers what is certainly grounded in the narrative. There are several examples of this case in which the subtitles operate within its own system of pacing to make more information known to the audiences rather than less through textual inventions. For example, the English subtitles for the lyrics of the film's soundtrack Mist, an existing Korean song from the 1970s, modify the original lyrics to foreshadow an upcoming element in the film. So the song goes, I walk alone on the street, filled with mist. But the line after that is not actually, is that your silhouette as seen in its subtitles? Originally, it is instead the single shadow of you who was once so kind. When the song plays in the film, the audio also stops just after the Korean word for once, which is the first word in the line. But the English subtitles show is that your silhouette to foreshadow the association of Seoda with a silhouette. Later in the film, instead of confessing his interest in Seoda, Haejun timidly tells Seoda out loud that it is her silhouette, spoken in English, that is pretty. By utilizing the soundtrack and the translingual word silhouette for its own sake, the subtitles explicitly use the word twice to help maintain and thematically present a cohesive narrative. The new lyrics of the song in the subtitles thus reveal a clearer relevance of the soundtrack to the readers of subtitles than even to say Korean-speaking audience member who might be less familiar with the song, since even the mention of shadows and the lyrics gets cut off in the film's original audio. Another example is when Seoda's new husband, a stock market analyst, jokes that he's an analyst and not an analyst who likes rear ends. On the streaming platform, the subtitles space out the word as analyst, breaking down the word analyst into 3 syllables to specify that he's talking about the English word analyst, while delivering the humor that he's playing with the word anal by adding the suffix ist instead of yst. Meanwhile, the word for anus in Korean, which is used in this scene, is a homonym of the word for studies, which can confuse Korean-speaking audiences who might think that the character is expressing his disinterest in the studies or the scholarly realm of stocks. So while real-time translations can delay one's understanding of what's being spoken, subtitles in films incorporating such techniques at times accelerate the process of comprehension and solicit bodily reactions such as laughter the moment the words appear on the screen. Other examples that reveal more context in the subtitles are writing downtown Seoul instead of the actual name on the street, Ulchiro in Seoul, and changing warm food to real food when referring to Haejun's home-cooked meals for his wife. In another scene, the subtitles also read a Chinese name rather than is there a last name called Sa in Korea, to directly reveal the information that there is no such name in Korean, while also explicitly foreshadowing that the character in question is of Chinese lineage. Apart from revealing pieces of information ahead of a scene, some aspects of the subtitles also change the word or the modality of the word to describe a character. For example, when Seore looks up the word 붕괴, a Korean word used by Haejun to describe his state of being after falling for Seore, the film fills the screen with a close-up of the Korean definition from the online dictionary on her phone. Although the film integrates another immersive metamedia content or element of a person learning a language, the subtitles translate the word 붕괴 with an English word that does not reflect the dictionary definition in Korean on the screen. The film subtitles translate the word 붕괴 as shattered, but 붕괴, or the infinitive form of the word's explanation in the dictionary, 무너지다, means collapse or to collapse. While the subtitles can speed up one's understanding of Haejun's state of being by having the audience comprehend the term as figurative rather than literal, the word shattered fails to contextualize the monumental scale and the physicality embedded in the word 붕괴, which inspires a mental image of Haejun collapsing to the ground and breaking. In Korean, the word 붕괴 is primarily used to describe the collapse of large-scale structures like buildings. And because such collapses are often used in situations of unexpected accidents, an example phrase below the definition in the dictionary reads 붕괴 위험, meaning danger of collapse. Furthermore, the original Korean definition is shown in verb forms on the screen, as mentioned earlier, with 무너지고 and 깨어짐. And 무너지고 means collapse or collapses in different tenses as a verb form, and 깨어짐 means to be broken or become broken. And so the full dictionary definition of 붕괴 is collapses and becomes broken in a way. To describe the way Haejun sees himself in a certain trajectory of disintegration. So these original Korean definitions suggest a kinetic movement of Haejun collapsing to the ground and breaking. But the subtitles for this shot of the dictionary definitions are ruined or broken, words that appear as adjectives or past participles of the verbs. And to me, this connotes an endpoint of such movements separately. And it portrays Haejun more as an inanimate object, or as a character already residing in the past, or in history, deceased. But according to the subtitles, Haejun is clearly a shattered, ruined, or broken character, which ultimately does describe his state of being in this moment, with a rather common expression, I'm completely shattered, but without the subtle allegory involved in the literal definition shown in the online dictionary with collapse. In the film, Haejun and Seore also often use a translator app like Google Translate, I would imagine, to translate whatever Seore says in Chinese to Korean, using a speech-to-text tool, and then like a text-to-speech audio tool where you kind of hear the robotic voice from the app. Accordingly, as phone dictionaries, recording devices, and automatic translators become thematized and aestheticized modes of communication, the film presents such tools as objects that lend themselves to interpersonal connections and interpretations, but through mechanisms that are indirect and oftentimes unreliable. And despite the occasional syntactical awkwardness and semantic errors, the unnatural aspect of these interactions, such as via the translator app, become an eerie yet intriguing catalyst that creates a unique bond between the two characters in the film. The subtlety in the film is also connected to Sare as a character whose mysterious elusiveness and indirect use of language epitomize her as the sea, symbolic of the unreachable depths of the unfathomable. Meanwhile, Haejun, who consistently rallies for structure, clarity, and stability, eventually crumbles like a collapsing building after encountering the unpredictability that is Sare. Although he verbally claims to prefer the sea over the mountains, which thematically speaks to his desire for the other, Haejun insists upon clearly defining every Korean word in a conversation that Sare might find challenging, which showcases his need for clarity. But such efforts do not lead to any fundamental progress in their relationship. On the other hand, moments of intimate connection occur when they engage in paralingual forms of communication, such as through glances, facial expressions, and body language. And it diminishes the need even for the subtitles in these scenes. As a contrast, words, especially wordplay, become significant elements associated with other characters like Haejun's wife, Chong-an, or Seore's new husband, Ho-shin. To substitute such wordplays, the subtitles invent equivalents by forming alphabetized alliteration to describe Chong-an's job as a nuclear reactor operator and a new acronym in English for Ho-shin's personalized business card. In the former case, subtitles appear as separate texts that imitate the effects of words through a different English consonant in order to maintain a similarity in meaning with the original sounding as 원자는 완전 안전, and the subtitles being clearly cleaner nuclear. In the latter, the subtitles do the opposite. In order to maintain an acronymic form, the English subtitles forsake the meaning based on each Korean word. So the meaning is completely different, but the name is kept, his name. And these cases reveal that subtitles manifest in different forms. As the textual and linguistic systems of the subtitles specifically cannot always be carriers of essence of meaning of the words consistently in the original language. The film also presents translated text as separate material when Haejun reads a transcript of Seore's verbal monologues in Chinese recorded on her smartwatch. As Haejun reads the translated text in written Korean, the printed paper transcript fills the frame, immersing the Korean-speaking audience in the process of intaking a set of translations without the means to verify its reliability. Haejun reads the transcript while imagining her voice play out in his head, including her laughter, while the audience hears and sees Seore in the actual moments when she's recording the very phrases in Mandarin. Haejun, who does not know Chinese, reads each line in the transcript as a Korean reader would read the subtitles in Korean. So while the Korean-speaking audiences can identify with Haejun's experience directly, readers and speakers of Chinese who do not know Korean can only identify with Seore, which reveals the film alternating between two different subjectivities. And it also applies to the different viewership experience. And for the audience members relying solely on the subtitles, the scene dramatizes the clash of two different language systems as Haejun, a Korean speaker who does not know Chinese, depends on the translations, which is then translated for the English reading audiences and subtitles. So although they cannot identify in terms of the languages with Haejun or Seore directly, the readers of the subtitles who do not know either language can experience the act of reading textual pieces of translations alongside Haejun. So the film thematizes the one's reliance on translations, but also interwoven with fantasy. Like other forms of paratext, subtitles exist as separate forms associated with the source, but one that operates within its own system of revelations and typographies. Decision to Leave particularly thematizes these different challenges of mutual understanding by creatively questioning the use of language and translations as a method for communication. On Notebook, Mubi's online film publication, the subtitle translator for Decision to Leave, Darcy Paquette, discusses in an article his challenges of subtitling and the words he chose when encountering the untranslatable aspects between Korean and English. Perhaps unlike the usual anonymity given to film subtitle translators, such articles revealing the authority and the authorship of the subtitle, they're appearing on the communal space on Mubi, turns the video streaming platform also into a more interactive text-based news outlet, adding more paratextual dimensions to the film and promoting the subtitles as part of the streaming platform services. The founder of Mubi, Effa Cockrell, also asserted in an interview from September of 2022 that in 10 years' time, the company will grow into a studio with its own production, distribution, direct-to-consumer, editorial, and more, and will soon exist in, quote, every major city from Toronto to Tokyo, end quote, suggesting a growth in transnational film viewership with continued editorials and exhibitions of films flowing internationally. In my view, such increasing demands of streaming services sort of destabilize fixed notions of categorizing and genreifying non-English films or foreign language films purely based on the original language, since the subtitles also play a pivotal role in cultivating such culture and adding new dimensions to the film's different viewing experiences. As an aestheticized, multilingual, and metamedia case study, Decision to Leave delineates how languages, technology, and platforms evolve over time, but always with room for miscommunication, which reveals the subtle, complex limitations and the possibilities of each linguistic currency, but without presenting the essence of semantics as the most paradigmatic starting point in understanding the other. So that leaves us with a lot of interesting questions, and thank you so much for your attention.
Yeah, are there any questions? Feel free to ask. Yeah.
Thank you for the question. This, I would say, is a pretty new realm also for the director. And it's very interesting because the director said that the only reason why this film is multilingual is because he wanted to cast the actress to face. Yeah. And she's a very big star in the Asian film industry, and so he wanted to cast her. And so his storyline was actually inspired by the actress and her languages, and so he ended up basing the entire narrative off of multilingualism and ended up using these digital translators as modes of connecting. Oh, and did she learn Korean for the film? I believe she knows a bit of Korean herself, and so there was a little bit of dubbing involved, but anyone else? Questions, comments? The question is, I didn't get like your own vision of these different things. What do you think about these? These decisions that were made like within the film. Yeah, I think that's interesting. That's that reflection because in my take of the film and their decisions was also very ambiguous. But then as I also was translating some of the parts myself, I noticed these differences, and I feel like generally when people talk about subtitles and relying on subtitles, also complaining about subtitles in terms of them not being accurate. I think what it means to be not accurate is oftentimes generalized, especially in content culture and film. And oftentimes, people say that subtitles is a barrier that can be overcome or must be overcome, and it's also, I think, serves as a barrier to people looking at international films in general. So I think I kind of was interested in that aspect of how it's not physical. So yeah, I actually do want to speak more with translators on these texts to see what their take is. Because I think, I don't know, being in translations, I think there could be some future subtitle translators who overlap also in my field. So because everybody's interested in translating as well in my field. So I wonder what the different mechanisms are when translating for film subtitles specifically, because there's that spatial limitation also of the screen and you have to make everything right. So I think most of the time the goal is to again, like to arrive at the most sort of significant meaning in the scene or in the entire film. But every fragment of that also doesn't sort of reflect the original, which is what people would assume. But then I kind of wanted to tease out what those little fragments are. You mentioned it's interesting, so on the point when you mentioned that the reading of the subtitles, depending on who you read, you're getting the different subjectivity that informs the film as informs the subjectivity. And then in the meantime, it occurs to me that the one is the advantage, in terms of paradoxality, is you obviously read all of those options. You also read the Chinese. No, I didn't. That's why I actually do want to collaborate with people who have that knowledge and the skill set. And yes, but I think that's why my presentation still sort of ties into the ongoing discussions that we've had, like perhaps the privilege or maybe the authority or the power of the translator and the interpreter. And so I would like to actually learn more about the differences between, translating a novel and, subtitling for a film, and what kind of, where the roles overlap and also where they diverge. Yeah. Mm-hmm. 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 I actually, I agree, and thank you, because, and that's why I think it also goes back to what you maybe said about the privilege of being in that kind of position to be able to compare, because yes, film viewing is a sort of audio visual experience, but when you're reading subtitles, you're also textually reading, and then looking at the images and listening to certain words, maybe a lot of English words. Also in the popular film like Parasite, what's so interesting about that film is the use of English words intermittently in that film. And I'm sure, depending on the audience, one can pick up on those uses of English words or uses of English words even in this film. And then maybe they can compare that to the subtitles to see if they have kept that word or not. So yeah, I think that lends itself to an interesting research, and I would like to kind of do more paratextual and translingual reading of the film.
Thank you. Thank you so much. All right, so now we're going to hear from our next presenter, Gary Massis, who is a fellow student here at the MATI program. And he'll be speaking to us about AI, MT, and CAT tools, boon or bane to the translation profession. Gary holds a BA in Modern Hebrew Language and Literature from Queens College. She also holds an MS in Industrial and Labor Relations at Cornell University. And he is a retired NYS principal court clerk and a current student, again, as I said, here in the MATI program. And he's also serving as the public relations officer at the Translation and Interpreting Society at Hunter College. And so I am glad that he is here with us to present.
Got to get my cold caffeine fix here. Okay, so this is an interesting topic. I want to thank Carla DeFranco for putting me up to this. In her final exam assignment, she mentioned the T word, thesis. So immediately I said, oh, hypothesis, research, analysis, and conclusion. And so I embarked on this journey. The subject is something that I've wondered about, and I've heard other students wonder about, is because of all this translation software, are the prospects for our future careers kind of going down the tubes? Where do we go from here? So that is the topic of my research, and machine translation, AI, and then of course, computer assisted translation. No, not happening. Try it again. Whoops. Wait a sec. Let's try that again. Oh, that's that one came out. Which one is that? That's career 2. It's supposed to be later, but okay, we'll get there. Oh. All right, thanks. Oh, big this one. Yes, so we start with the hypothesis, and I took a contrarian view just to see what would happen. Hypothesis is that artificial intelligence, uh-oh, what's that? The laser pointer, is that working? No, I guess not. Okay. Get rid of that green stuff. You see, nothing machine is perfect. They always, all the screw ups come with machines. Why bother with the research?
Which slide did you wanna?
Is that the first slide?
These are the ones.
Yeah. Oh, shoot, this should be underneath that one.
This should be underneath this one.
No, this should be the top.
This one. Okay.
Perfect. Is this snapper working? Yes, now it is.
Yeah. Oh, well,
Yeah.
yeah, it's not gonna
It's
be.
spooky. I'll do this old school, pretend this is a blackboard. Anyway, so the hypothesis was AI, cat tools and machine translation will have, get ready, it's a 5-syllable word, a deleterious impact on the translation industry. I think this comes from the word delete, meaning it's going to remove the necessity for that. So I had to do research to figure out if this was true or not. So I decided for the first time to do a research survey. And I handed out those surveys to Hunter College graduate students in language departments. My Hebrew grader and person who I'm taking courses with, Daron Friedman, he let me hand them out in his classes. And in addition, he gave them out to another Hebrew professor, and he also gave them out to a contact of his in the Japanese department. Make a long story short, in 2 days, I had 146 surveys completed waiting in his mailbox. He is freaking awesome. And he's a great teacher. It doesn't feel like you're learning. It feels like an experience. And he gives the whole experience from an Israeli point of view. So I love him, and I think he's wonderful. Anyway, let's go. Oh, what I'd like to do is I'd like to just pass out copies, blank surveys, so you can follow with me as I do the research and analysis. These. Ooh. Just pass it out. The back. That's getting passed back. Thanks. I'll give you a minute to look it through. Okay. As you go through these questions, you may develop, and formulate some of your own opinions in response to these questions. That's the way I get for using carbonated soda. So the first question, now remember, I'm asked, the key question here is number 7. My interest was, how would you describe the career outlook for translation professionals? So I really only gave them 2 choices, positive or negative: bleak, promising, waning, or expanding. In all of the questions, I instructed the students with the instructions, they should circle all items that apply to them. So I got people with Tagalog and all kinds of professions that weren't even in here, like nurse and etc. You can imagine what it was like to do a spreadsheet like that. So when I did the spreadsheets originally, it was a nightmare. And then I realized I'm not going to consider and analyze any category that has fewer than 10 entries. And then I just eliminated a whole bunch of categories. So the first one is, how do people in different languages who study different languages respond to AI? What are their opinions on the career prospects? So I have 5 of the major languages that gave me enough responses were Spanish, Japanese, English, Hebrew, and Chinese. Now you'll see down here, that's the total number of respondents, 37, 39. Everybody spoke English in addition, that's 146, 29, 22. Now the 146 is the total number of surveys that I handed out. So this would give us a barometer of the general attitude of people toward the career. And of course, you'll see here 61% positive, which basically right there totally demolishes my hypothesis, because overall people have a positive, or students, language students, have a very positive view of the career prospects for translators. But there's some very interesting anomalies. If you analyze the languages, which language would you imagine have the highest or lowest prospects for the future? I would say Chinese and Japanese should have the best prospects, because it's much more difficult for machine translation to go from words to pictures to characters. So therefore, the software may not be as effective when it comes to those languages. Surprisingly, very surprisingly, the only metric that was below 50% positive, which means it was 57% negative, was Chinese. Don't understand it. The most, and I would also think that Spanish, which I've heard about, since it's so prevalent and there's so many people who speak it and it's being translated all over, so the competition is great. And I would have thought that Spanish, people who take Spanish would have a negative outlook toward career prospects or translators. But look at this. They had the highest positive percentage of any of the language categories. Next closest was Japanese, where they had a 66% positive outlook. English was 61, Hebrew was 50-50, and again, Chinese was 43%. So that is the language metric. Remember, we're measuring question number 7, how would you rate career prospects? Now I get to career, which is number 3 on your survey. What are your career interests? Well, I had a lot of them, but again, I limited myself to the ones with 10 at least. Teacher, psychologist, translator, artist, musician, researcher, developer, which could mean like a real estate developer, computer programmer, app designer, doctor, and web developer. They're in descending order. So if you look at the teachers, they had the most positive view of translation prospects for translators. Psychologists also. Translators themselves, this is good news, yay translators, had a 71% positive view, or 71% of the respondents viewed the career prospects as positive. Artists, the artsy people, look at them, 71%, 67% art, 60%, 7% music. They had a favorable impact of career prospects for translators. Then a developer, which was strange because that seemingly has nothing to do with translation. We got 58%. Computer programmers descended, still positive. App designers, it's going down. Doctors went down to below the 50% mark, 43% positive. That means it's 57% negative. So it's starting to get into a negative space. Now, here's the kicker. Web developer. A web developer is someone who's into technology, understands it. And what did they put down? We had a 28% positive view, 72% negative. It's interesting. I don't have an answer to it, but data are stubborn things. They just tell a story, and it's our business to interpret the data. Then we deal with career prospects by familiarity with translation software. If you look on question number 4, you could choose almost everybody knows about Google Translate, which is the first choice, A. The next one be artificial intelligence, which a good amount of people know about. The third one is CAT tools, which pretty much, I believe, only translating professionals would know about CAT tools for the most part. And then there are those who know nothing about any of these. So those are my categories. So the respondents, again, this is the number. You see 130. Most people knew about machine translation, then artificial intelligence. So let's start. People who had no knowledge of any kind of translation software, they had 70% positive view. I guess they didn't know how we could be ravaged by the software. Then you have people familiar with machine translation. That drops down to 60% positive attitude. Artificial intelligence, believe it or not, it still stayed at 60%. Then when you got to machine translation plus, I then combined them. What if somebody has more knowledge? They know both about machine translation and about artificial intelligence, and I still got the same. So from a technological perspective, based on this data, it looks like there is a bright future. Then I go to the workload and income metrics. I discovered as I was making up this spreadsheet, tabulating the results, that this is a whole new dimension, which could be compared to the other metrics of age, et cetera. So I first look at the workload, and question number 5 and 6, how has translation software affected your workload? Well, some of you, most of you are not old enough, but those of you who remember when the fax machine came out, wonderful invention, but all of a sudden, instead of sending things by mail, it would come by fax. And the information or the orders would come in hot and heavy. So everybody's workload was increased. The question is, were their salaries increased commensurate with the extra work they had because of the technology of faxes? So I applied the same thing to translation software, and I asked remember, these are all language students. I said, although not all of them are working, maybe, but still, those were my respondents. What impact did it have on your workload? So increasing the workload, 9.2%. Decreasing the workload, this is nice, 31.7%. And the same would be most of the respondents. Translation software did not change their workloads. When we get to salary, only 2.8% of them said that due to this increase in workload or staying the same or whatever, did their salary increase. Salary decrease, thank God, was very, very low. Stayed the same, of course, was the greatest percentage that no matter what happened, their salary stayed the same. But I hate to think about the poor sods who had an increase, and there were some, as you see, I just did a screenshot. There were people who had an increase in workload and a decrease in salary. That is not fun. Even if they have an increase in workload and the salary stays the same, that means they're working harder for the same money. If they increase their workload and they also increase their salary, well, that's like getting a promotion to a position where you have to do a lot more work, but you get some salary increase. I took all these factors and I created a concept of quality of life. This was not a question, but I then extrapolated from this data to figure out how workload and salary impacts from translation software would impact a person's quality of life. So under increased quality of life, believe it or not, I got 32.6%, probably because the workload decreased or it stayed the same. For decrease in the quality of life, thank God, we just got a small percentage, 8.3%. Staying the same again was the lion's share. 59% of respondents said, the data from the other two areas I extrapolated to state that their quality of life was probably improved. Now we go to number 7 was the pivotal question about the increase, about the positive or negative toward the translation software. So we're going to skip to, I think that's question number 8. We're going to skip to the next questions. 8 and 9 are about age and gender. How does it break down by different people's ages, what their concepts, what their ideas are about the future career prospects of translators? Now, as you can see, I dealt with college students. So all of these areas, I had a few, I had 8 in the 60 plus, probably a lot of them were auditors. Of course, I'm not in that category. I pretend not to be. So what we have is 16 to 25, which are most of the college students, there was a 59% positive outlook toward translation software and job prospects. 41% negative, but this is a good number. And then from the 25 to 30, I imagine some of them were working already. We had a 71% positive outlook for translators. However, just keep in mind that 25 to 30, because I was dealing with students, I only had 15 respondents. And there are 14 because some of the respondents did not answer about the career prospects. So by age, if I were to, well, it looks like the trend is going the opposite direction, at least here, that the older they get, the more positive view they have. But of course, I don't have all the other ages, so I can't really spot a trend or describe a trend. And then finally, question number 8, what is your gender? I included all of the different possibilities. Not all of them, but the major categories. My wife's a social worker, so I said, okay, what do I got to include so I don't look bad? She said, well, I looked up in my manual and you got to include this, that, and then you're basically covered. So let's go to the next one. Translation career prospects by gender. So again, 146 transcripts. The males, there were 71 of them. And this was the breakdown of positive and negative. So we get by male, the male response was 57.1% positive, which is excellent. But the females, 36 to 18, a 66.7% positive view of the outlook for translators. So that just tells you that women are more optimistic than men, which we probably knew anyway. And of course, you saw some of the other areas, the other descriptions. We did have some answers, but as I said, anything below 10, I did not analyze. The data analysis we just did together, group discussion, and a conclusion. Most importantly, my hypothesis is not supported by the survey data, which I'm very proud of, because if it's an objective survey and then you don't know what your response is going to be. So I'm very happy. I'm happy also I was disproved because it gives me a brighter view of my future. The second conclusion is students across all metrics. Again, the metrics are those elements which we use to measure the positive attitudes toward translation tools, language, career, translation, software, knowledge, ages, and gender overwhelmingly project a positive future for career translators. Good stuff. How do we get rid of this stuff? And this says up here, and the research goes on. Oh, excuse me, the research doesn't end there. I need more data from different age groups between 25 and 60 plus. But I have very little data from translation professionals, although I did send an email to the New York Circle of Translators and some automated responses came back twice, so I didn't hear from them. And then career professionals, whether they're translators or not. If you have people actually working and they work in careers, they're more likely to see the practical aspects of translation software. And then, of course, language groups. I did have a few. I had a great variety of them, but the concentration was in 5 languages. It would be nice, for example, to get a concentration in Russian. Arabic would be good. Chinese, I have, but I could use more. And some of the other languages that I mentioned in question number 2 of the survey. Come on, behave. Behave. Not behaving. If anybody wants to contact me, if you manage to get some surveys filled out, you scan them in and get people to sign them. The easiest thing is if I have paper, because in paper, all of these surveys are paginated. As I mentioned, 1 through 146. When I have them paginated, as I was entering data and found inconsistencies, I had to go back all the way again till I found the error. So paper is very helpful. If anybody can deliver paper, that's great. Otherwise, by email, take all the responses and remove any identifying information like the email address where they sent it from. In this way, we have total anonymity. This is my email address if anybody wants to contact me. And of course, our glorious Maddie program director, Julie Tay, you could always contact her. Hoping our paths cross again in the future. I just lost my religion. I put it on, born again. Okay. Any questions? Yes. Right. Right. The first metric. We're a lot worse, yeah. Wow, that's a landmine. That's a landmine. Thank you for throwing that one before me. What I thought about was, again, I'm perplexed. I thought it would be just the opposite. There's a great need for translation. And the tools don't do such a good job in Chinese. I've been told this by numerous students. Maybe if they come from a repressed background of communism, socialism, whatever it is, so they're perhaps hedgy about new technology coming in, and they're skeptical once that new technology comes in, all the things they may have been comfortable with in their repressed societies go out the window. That's pop psychology. It doesn't have any basis in any type of evidence of that. But you do raise an interesting point. See, you just made my work even harder. If I were to compare the languages together with the genders, would that make a difference? If you want to do my spreadsheet for me, you're welcome to. Yes. That's why at the end, I said, I need more data from translation professionals who are actually working, and I need more data from general career professionals because I don't have good metrics for people who are actually working. So again, everybody knows what my population is, and this is what I got. But there's room for a lot more, especially if this technology would work. There's room for a lot more analysis. Anybody else? Yeah. Surveying them, and then another. Right, as I had said, whoopsie. As I said about the end, jeez. I need more data from different age groups, which will tell me about attitudes, people who grew up without technology, how do they think? And I need more data from translation professionals. I don't have, working translators. I didn't get any response from the New York Circle of Translators. And as you said, sir, career professionals, people who are actually working, because that's really the only fair barometer. But I set out this survey to be inclusive. Any other questions? Yes. You're welcome.
Primarily written translated as interpreted, especially since we just talked about text to speech, which was used a lot in the movie. And I know that I've heard that computer assisted interpretation is developing, it's still not very available yet, but it's coming soon. So yeah, I'd be very interested to know how interpreters feel about that.
If you look at question number 3 about careers, you will see there's translator and interpreter. They're kept separate. Now, we must have gotten 7 or 8 responses from people who circled interpreter. Theoretically, I could have lumped them together, but I didn't because interpreters are a different breed. I took the test. I retired from the court system. I took the test to be a per diem translator in Hebrew. Man, that was a killer. I didn't make it. Talk about the judges talking a mile a minute. You got simultaneous translations. If the bullet took a different trajectory and it came in a different angle into the skull, there's no way. I just sat there. I can't translate that simultaneously. I just wanted to say, first of all, thank you for Julie for being open-minded enough to accept me in the program. There is no Hebrew track. She, not only that, she collaborated with Doron Friedman and made this all possibility. I'm grateful to you. I'm grateful to Doron Friedman for being one of the best Hebrew teachers I've ever had, for bringing it to life for me, as was said, to inculcate the culture and the attitudes of the people from the countries where those languages are spoken is really helpful in terms of any kind of interpretation. From my own perspective, I originally thought I would be a per diem Hebrew interpreter. I'm not sure. This Maddie program has opened my eyes to so many ways, so many different things. As you see, I was wearing the T-shirt Semiology Guru. I learned about semiology. My whole perspective on the world has changed. In terms of technology, before I joined the program 9 years ago, I did not own a laptop. I never had to use spreadsheets, and I certainly did not do a PowerPoint presentation. So what I've gotten from this program, aside from the knowledge, the education, the theory, is wow. and I was kicking and screaming every step of the way. But I made it through and I feel really good. Final point, the computer assisted translation, when I work on it, the CAT tools, it is so complicated that I can't imagine that that kind of work could be replicated by any individual. It's complicated and it's helpful. Thank you very much. Now it's my second application. I don't know. 4.5 years ago, I started. My daughter got me started with the Institute.
Thank you, Gary. That was a very excellent presentation. All right, we have one more speaker. We are going to introduce Evgenia Liu, who will be talking to us about innovative ways of teaching liaison interpretation, a two-layered manifestation of the platform economy. So let's all put our hands together. Thank you.
No wonder she's such a troublemaker. She knows a lot.
Thanks to Gary, I will be using my own road. I will start with one. Be on the safer side. Okay, guys. Thank you very much, Julie, for having organized such an event and for having accepted my presentation. I think that the layout has changed a little bit, so I'm sorry. So today we're going to continue and talk about the platform economy.
Platform economy, but I'm going to adopt a slightly different perspective, so you will see. And I will be talking about teaching interpretation. Okay, so the structure of this presentation is going to be the following. So I will start with the course objectives, and then we will continue with the course design and teaching materials. And I will present the first layer of the manifestation of platform economy, and then we will end up with the evaluation of the students and the course itself, and it's going to be our second layer. Okay, so course objectives. I will give you a little bit of background, so how I have ended up with this topic and with this idea. So I've been teaching English for more than 20 years. Gosh, I'm really old. Okay, and well, it started off with general English. Then in a Belgian university, I worked with English for specific purposes for more than 10 years. It was English for psychology, sociology, and medical English. And then last year, I ended up with the Department of Applied Linguistics, okay? So a slightly different perspective. And we have this master's program in translation. And part of this program is the interpretation course, and to be more specific, liaison interpretation. So probably you're asking yourselves a question, so what is it? Okay. Don't worry, I asked myself the same question. Okay, so they simply gave me the course to teach, created a liaison interpretation. What is it? Okay, so actually, there is very little information on liaison interpretations. I found this very ancient book, 1996, and it defines liaison interpretation as genre of interpreting where the interpreting is performed in two language directions by the same person. It is a style where the interpreter is physically present in an interview or a meeting and usually uses the consecutive mode of interpreting. So I've highlighted the three characteristics characteristics, so 2 languages by the same person, physically present, and consecutive mode. I would just simply say that the second characteristic is maybe no longer applicable because, right, so the context has changed, and so nowadays, and we will actually see this, being physically present is not necessarily an obligation. Okay, so we all try to professionalize our students and to make them ready to work, right, professionally, be efficient. So this idea of professionalization is very important. And because of it, it's very important to set up very clear objectives and aim very particular goals and skills. So, okay, course objectives, they're intertwined. So this is an introductory course, right? So its duration is only 12 hours. Okay, so normally students have had no experience in interpreting and in liaison interpreting in particular. This is also the first year of the master's program. Okay, so it's important to take into account as well. Okay, so I wanted to show my students the particularities of this type of interpreting. And also to teach them some strategies, interpretation strategies, typical of liaison interpreting, and skills. Okay, so, well, liaison interpretation is possible in several contexts, so health context, right, medical context, judicial system, social system, and also business. And I decided I will just limit myself to the business setting. Okay, you cannot do everything, so, well, just business setting. So because of this limitation to the business setting, so I focused on the specialized vocabulary, which is specific to business English, right? So this brings us to our next part. So the strategies that I decided to introduce into the course were shadowing and memory, paraphrasing, explanation, simplification, the salami technique, generalization, omission, then how to teach students to deal with numbers, jokes and humorous elements, cultural aspects, difficult speakers, offensive and inappropriate language, business in a business setting, and because of this business setting, what are the ethical principles? Okay, so those were the strategies and skills that the course focuses on. Okay, so as you can see, all of them, almost all of them, are applicable to consecutive and simultaneous interpretation as well. Okay, so let's continue. So professionalization. So it's important to take into account the evolving nature of the professional context. Okay, so we have all survived the COVID, right, context, and we know nowadays that a lot of classes happen online. A lot of people started working remotely. Okay, so it's important to take this into account. So if we take this into account, we increase the authenticity level of the course, right? And when we speak about the authenticity level, we speak about the authenticity of tasks and the authenticity of materials, okay? So, and this actually should be integrated into the design of a course, right? So, and that is why this idea of the platform economy, right, occurred to me. So, course design and teaching materials. So we have spoken about the platform economy, right, for several hours now, and I realized that I approached this idea from a slightly different perspective. Okay, and so because the notion is quite recent, I decided to actually give more background to it, right, and provide you with the definition on which I base my talk today. Okay, so platform economy is defined as any internet platform that connects dispersed networks of individuals to facilitate digital interactions in a triangular relationship between three parties. Okay, so once again, the characteristics are in bold. So if we speak about the triangular relationship, we speak about customer, we speak about worker who communicate through a platform, internet platform. Okay, so we're talking about the teaching context. Okay, so in our case, we're going to modify the triangular relationship a little bit. I'm really sorry about the layouts. Okay, so we will be talking about a simulated worker who's a student. I will be talking about a simulated customer who might be a student or who might be another person, a teacher, for example. Okay, so well, I actually started by looking at the existing materials, okay, and the ones that exist on other platforms, for example, YouTube, Netflix, Prime Video. And unfortunately, I haven't found much that actually suited my course. Okay, so we remember the strategies that I wanted to focus on and the business setting. Okay, so there was not much, and the two languages, French and English. Okay, there is not much on this. So I came up with an excellent idea in my mind. Okay, so why not design my own teaching materials? Okay, and so I decided to actually create a mini series, okay, teaching mini series, pedagogical mini series to use in my interpretation class. Okay, and this will be later integrated into a MOOC type platform. Okay, so let's have a look. So the hypothesis was the following. So if we use the triangular relationship, right, the level of authenticity of task and materials will be increased. If the level of authenticity increases, then student motivation increases. And we know that motivation is a drive. So if motivation is higher, the efficiency of learning, right, will also be enhanced. Okay, so all the positive things. So this year it was actually a pilot mini series, right? So I didn't have a lot of money to create it, so it was all in-house work. I worked with a professional actress who's listed on IMDb. So sorry if it's too concrete as information, but okay. So we only had 5 episodes. So it was an introduction, a scene at a hotel, a scene with a taxi driver, visit to a soap factory, a business lunch, and a visit to vineyard. I live in the south of France, so vineyards seem to be a logical, right, parts of the course. Okay, so once again, I'm interested in motivation and acquisition, whether motivation positively impacts acquisition of skills and knowledge. Okay, so let's have a look. So there were only 16 subjects. I only taught 2 groups, each of approximately 8 students. Okay, so I asked the students to complete a post questionnaire using another platform, Socrative. And I asked a few questions concerning motivation. So the first one was the mini series was a good idea. 100% said yes, it was a good idea. Then the content of the mini-series was relevant. And once again, 100% said yes, it was relevant. Let's continue with the acquisition part. So the mini-series helped them improve their skills. 100% said yes. It was anonymous, right? So they didn't have to give their names. Okay. So and then I actually asked them which of the 4 was a better way of improving their skills. And so I presented them with the following 4 elements which were present in my course. So scripted dialogues, films and series, online videos, and mini series. And so as you can see, 50% of the students said that mini series was a good idea. So it actually was a better way to work on their skills. So I took the same 4 elements and I asked them what was the most interesting element, right? And here an interesting thing is that 37.5% said that films and series and the mini series were the most interesting elements. So we definitely see the pattern here. Students really like this kind of series, TV, and all this fictional idea, right? So probably the professional script and professional actors could improve maybe the results for my mini series. Okay, so let's have a look. I'm going to continue the work in the mini series, and this time there will be more episodes. So I'm going to keep the same as we had just before. So introduction, hotel, soap factory, business lunch, and vineyard. And then I will add another, some other elements: medical system, business negotiations. And then as I live in the southern France, so I will also speak about, integrate the material on olive oil production, snails, honey, and goat cheese. Okay, so there will be several possible configurations. The first one will be to teach half of the mini series in class and the other half at home. Okay, so the second configuration will be taught remotely, right, through a platform, for example, a MOOC type platform. And this is our first manifestation of platform economy. So students will be acting as simulated workers through a platform, and they will be providing their services for a simulated client. Okay, let's continue. The last part, so evaluation, and he will speak about the second layer. So to make things more authentic, I decided that at the end of the term, students will be asked to do interpretation via Zoom, right? Okay, so nowadays a lot of negotiations happen remotely, right? People use Zoom or other platforms, right? And interpreters just simply provide their services. So why not use this during the evaluation process? So it was definitely more stressful, but it was very fun to do too. Okay, so I hid the faces of my students because I didn't have the time to ask for their authorization. So it was business conversations, so the same limitation as I set up before. And there were always three participants: the teacher, who acted as a client, there was a student with a hidden face, okay, and there was another person who acted as another customer. And this time I didn't hide the face because it's my husband. I guess he doesn't mind showing his face. Okay, and so this was a very authentic situation, and this is actually the manifestation, the second manifestation of the platform economy. So this is something that students will probably have to do, or future professionals will have to do during their future professional careers. Okay, and so the very last element I think that is also interesting to maybe to take into account is the evaluation of the course, which I did through a platform called Socrative. So Gary, by the way, you can use the platform to do your surveys. Okay, so yes, so the evaluation of the course by the students. So I didn't change anything. So the first comment was, and there were many of them, well, 16 actually, I just picked up 3. As I had never done interpretation before, I thought that this class was a perfect introduction to the subject. It helped me progress a lot. I liked how we use different tools, and working with various videos made the class even more interesting and realistic. How I wish we had done more exercises and memory training. It was just 12 hours, guys, come on. Right, then material based on real life situations. So once again, this realistic appears, right? And an interesting course, a good introduction to interpretation, and the mise-en-scène was a lovely touch. The exam was very stressful and a bit quick, but overall very enjoyable. And so here, once again, we have this reference to the mini-series, plus we have a reference to the exam, which was stressful, but anyway, interpretation is stressful. Okay, the evaluation method seemed fair enough. And yay, 100% said it was fair. And it's quite rare for students to say that the exam is fair. Right, so a lot of positive things, and I'm going to conclude with a little bit of a summary. So today I approached the idea of the platform economy from a slightly different perspective, so less maybe economic centered, right? And I presented you with the triangular relationship, which is characteristic of the platform economy. And I also adjusted it a little bit to the teaching context, where we spoke about simulated customer, simulated worker, and the platform. Okay, and all of this could be actually taken into account when designing a course both in terms of the teaching materials and the evaluation process. And actually, all this becomes very authentic to the students. And if it's authentic, it's more motivating. And if it's more motivating, it's more efficient. Okay, so hypothesis proven. Okay, right. And also, if you noticed, I used the word innovative in the title of my presentation. Okay, and so actually, I will finish this presentation off with the 4 characteristics of innovation, and all of them can be applied to this course. So, novel character, yes, definitely. Maybe not in the United States, but in France it is. Yes, it's new, and especially when we talk about teaching interpretation and teaching liaison interpretation. Product, it's definitely a product, so it's a mini series, right? So it's a product. Change and improvements, changes motivation, improves learning. Durability and transferability. So I've used this and I'm using this to teach liaison interpretation, but it can be used to teach business English. It can be used to teach just interpretation, or I don't know, business ethics. Okay, so it's definitely transferable. It can be transferred to English speaking students who learn to interpret into French as well, right? So it's durable and it's transferable. So it's definitely innovative. Okay. The references that I used. And I thank you for your attention, and a few pictures of Grenoble, French, the French university where I teach. So a nice view of snow-capped Alps, and we're organizing a conference on specialized genres and translation in December this year. So if you're interested, you will be welcome. Thank you very much. So questions? Gary. We'll use this conversation.
I appreciate your innovative methods and how you use media and actors, and I'm sure your students really appreciate you, and that's really nice.
Thank you very much. By the way, I could maybe share the survey with my students and maybe French translators, so you could add another layer to your to your study. So how these tools can be perceived in France or in the United States, right? Good. Yes, please.
How your passion reflects through like these words. Passion as teaching. So yeah, it's basically that is how resourceful you are for teaching something that you didn't have a lot of material.
No.
You have to build your own. And you did a great job. And it's
Thank you.
working. You're going to continue with that. So more than a question is just saying, when you work with passion and you work hard.
Thank you so much. Those are very nice words. Actually, teachers don't earn much in France. I guess it's more or less the same here in the United States. So it's definitely a question of passion. Thank you. Thank you. And I used to be a translator and an interpreter, but I definitely like teaching more. Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you.
All right. So we are building up to more exciting things here. I am very pleased to introduce our student panel. Coming up as they get ready, I'm going to introduce them individually. We have Kelly Clinton. Kelly is, I think she's in the third semester already, right? Third semester, right? And she's in the Spanish track. You know, we are New Yorkers here. Fundamentally, those of us who managed to show up, I think most of us are New Yorkers. Kelly is one of those, you know, she works very, very hard. She teaches while she's studying in this program. Yeah, you're teaching in Spanish, right? Teaching in a Spanish program. Yeah. And Anna Gesebrak, she's going to be moderating on this panel. I think Anna should be already a graduate of our program, if I'm not mistaken. You're taking an extra class, you're going above and beyond, right? So Anna is in the Russian track. Our star student, a straight A. Danella, another of our star students. Danella, president of the student organization, the Translation Society of Hunter College, and Danella in the Spanish track. And Danella is graduating. Graduated. Right. Graduating just this May, coming up. And then we have Laura, our relatively junior student who's just started with us. Laura is multilingual, as you can see. You know, that you have to count with a few fingers the languages she has in the repertoire. So today, to do a positive spin as we wrap up the day's events, we're going to look at opportunities and possibilities for translators and interpreters within the platform economy. And before we end here, I'd like those of you, especially those of you who haven't spoken, right? Because we're going to have time, since we're skipping over Christina, we're going to have time for language stories. So let's hear from each of you, right? A language-centered story, straight from the gut, from your experience, right? Personal experience that either resonates with the theme of this conference or with something that, you know, we have discussed through the day, okay? All right, so let's get started. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor. How's the volume? Is it all right? Okay. All right, so yes, as Professor Tay said, we're going to discuss our perspectives as emerging professionals on this topic of the platform economy, finding our place within the platform economy. And for the first question I'd like to ask, I think it dovetails very well with the presentation we just heard from Gary. So my question to all of you would be, as emerging translating, interpreting professionals, do you in general view the platform economy as a net positive, providing more opportunities, or a net negative, devaluing your role in your work? And what strategies might you use to maximize the positive aspects of the platform economy in your own practice? Perhaps there are some specializations that you feel would be particularly useful, or how would you approach this? And maybe we'll start with Kelly. What do you think?
Thank you for such a great question. Okay. Well, as a student, I would say that it's very exciting to learn about all these different aspects in the translation and interpreting field. And I would overall view it as a net positive, because now we are reaching a point in the world where everyone is so interconnected, and especially thanks to the kind of like innovations that we have with the internet and new ways of meeting people. You no longer have to go to a conference, exchange maybe a PO box with someone or a landline number or some other kind of way to reach you. You can actually access a plethora of jobs pretty easily over the internet, and you can really work from anywhere, which I think is something that's very important for all jobs as they continue to progress, and especially in a post-COVID world where I think we all kind of has learned that anything can happen and we have to be prepared for the unexpected. But I like the idea of really emerging our opportunities through globalization and connecting through social media and the internet and all these kinds of platforms, but also that we are able to provide language services to maybe people who would not have had that opportunity before, because maybe they couldn't just reach out and get a quote, or they didn't know where to look. And now we can actually advertise ourselves as emerging professionals online and hopefully get jobs that way. So thank you.
Fantastic, thank you. And Laura, what do you think? What are your thoughts?
Well, I agree with Kelly. I'm going to be brief. There are two aspects. So definitely, and this was discussed by the professors, we need to find our niche. Definitely, we need to know what we're good at and what we're passionate about and work on that. And the other thing about I think we need to rethink our relationship with machines. I would ask any one of you, how many of you followed blindly instructions from a machine today? I would say probably 100%. Google Maps, notifications, check that, do that. So the main question would be, who is the master and who is the slave? So this would apply to many other aspects, but if we use technology as a tool for development, there is that thing, we have an edge. But then if we deposit our brains, abilities, and uniqueness in that machine, we're lost. That's what I think.
I see, thank you. And Daniela, what are your thoughts?
All right, heavy answers. Well, I think it's a net positive, in my opinion. Speaking of niches, something that I'm really interested in looking into and doing more of is faith-based interpreting. That's something that I'm very passionate about. And especially now with COVID, for example, a lot of services have been on Zoom, live streamed. And so I think in that sense, there's a lot of opportunity. And we can also explore new niches and specialties as well through social media, through people that we know. And so I think it's a net positive. There you go.
All right, nice, a very optimistic worldview is forming here. So to kind of dig a little deeper into some of the comments that you all have made about technology and finding your place on the platform economy. Well, a lot of translators and interpreters tend to feel that AI is a bit of an existential threat. And the presence of AI is probably going to grow as the platform economy increases. So what do you think? What kind of added value could translating, interpreting professionals who are humans provide that AI cannot? What are your thoughts about that? I'll change the order. So let's start with Laura.
Okay. Not long ago, I attended a conference from a futurologist. He's well known from Argentina, my homeland, and he makes some kind of predictions. So he did this. He predicted many things that actually already happened about the way technology is gonna take over jobs, quote unquote, and stuff. The thing is, what technology and AI cannot do is be human. So he said this, and I will quote him because it was such a good example. The problem is when people act like machines that make us lose our jobs. For example, during the pandemic, a lot of people at the supermarket, there was a supermarket in some Scandinavian country that trained their cashiers to speak with customers, to be nicer to customers. And those supermarkets had amazing sales because they would, instead of being machines, you know. So when it comes to soft skills, to being human, we are irreplaceable. And that is like, why do we want to compete with our own creation who should be serving us? I think, sorry, I don't really have answers. But the other thing he said is like, if you are going to a doctor, there are machines, he said that, and it's happening. Some very minor operations are conducted by machines already. And because they're more precise and so forth. If they're telling you that your relative's not gonna make it, do you want it from a robot or from a human being? So there are many things where there is no competition, I think.
Yes, fascinating. Very well said. Thank you. And Daniela, what do you think?
Well, something that I remembered when you asked that question was in Back to the Future, you know, they thought in 2015 we would have hoverboards like that would actually hover. That's not happening. So I think there's still time for us to still, you know, have our jobs and things like that. I mean, definitely AI is going to progress, but I agree with what Laura said. I think it's still that human touch that we have, right? That can't be replaceable. Especially with things of such as jokes and things of that nature that AI can't really replicate. It's a special feel, a human touch that I think AI can never replicate. So that's all I have to say about that.
Makes sense. All right. And Kelly, what are your thoughts?
Well, I agree with pretty much everything that has been said on this panel so far. Another comment that I'd like to lift up is that I don't think that interpreters or translators will ever leave the conversation entirely when it comes to AI developing in really like just providing language services to people. But I think one thing that a lot of people who maybe get scared by the presence of AI in this industry maybe aren't looking at the perspective of professionals will always be there and we will always be behind these sort of technologies, but we maybe will have the opportunity now to carry more services and more opportunities to really understand and make really different kinds of progression to maybe people who wouldn't have access before, who couldn't afford potentially to hire a professional interpreter or translator. But if we go behind that and ensure the quality as it progresses, then we can really have, I think, a wonderful partnership with AI and work together to make sure that really as many people as possible are getting the support that they need, especially in dire situations with medical, legal, that have life or death repercussions. And I mean, of course, it's always going to be preferred to have a person there that can really have that emotion and human touch with them. But that also being said, if we can have that and also find a way to embrace technology and embrace the wonderfulness of the unknown, I think that we're really going to be in for a hopefully happier world.
Wow, wonderful. Thank you. All right. And so I'm also wondering in terms of the platform economy, in terms of all these websites we might be interacting with, how important do you think it is for a translator interpreter to very actively market herself? So in your view, what is the best way to approach this idea of marketing as a freelancer or as an emerging professional? Maybe I'll start with Daniela.
Definitely to take advantage of, social media, websites like ProZ and things of that nature, and even people that to even just tell them, I'm doing this, and they might need your service or know someone who may need your service. So, sometimes the world seems so vast, but sometimes it's very small, depending on who you know and the network that you create. So I think that's a good way to kind of put yourself out there and to find new opportunities that way.
Awesome. Awesome. And Kelly, what do you think?
I mean, I think that it's always important to market yourself, no matter what industry that you're going to be working in. I think that especially with the way things are progressing digitally, that it's a really exciting time. You have LinkedIn, you have different kinds of websites specifically for translators and interpreters to go talk with each other and market and make sure that we're really understanding the industry. There's been a lot of talk today about how we all need to be really, collaborating with each other and collaborating with technology and collaborating to make sure we're the best professionals we can be. And if you can just present yourself in a confident way and really just have faith in yourself, knowing that you know what you are bringing to the table and what your specializations are, and you're willing to grow and learn, I think people will see that and be more attracted to the prospect of hiring you.
Yeah. Wow, thank you. And Laura, what do you think?
Well, I was thinking about many things. So I want to take some of the things that you said, which were wonderful. I do think like you do, but I'm not that optimistic in the sense that tools are tools, and who uses them and the agenda behind them can and is affecting us not in a good way. We have to be honest about that. So that's why I also asked about, do we have an association? Are we gonna be in a union? Because that's the reality. It's been like that for a while, and it's going to get worse. The thing is, how are we gonna deal with that and ask for more and be better? So that's what I wanted to add. And about marketing yourself, I think the uniqueness, finding, being unapologetically yourself and being very, very, very good at what you do, that will set a model and help you find jobs. It is, as she said, people who usually. I've had friends who were not really the best students, but got to translate many books because their uncle had a publishing house. So let's be honest, but if you are going wider, like what you do, people will know.
Mhm,
That's the thing, yeah.
mhm. Yes, thank you. And so do you think that your working languages affect your marketability in this economy? Do you feel that less commonly spoken languages are becoming more desirable or in demand? How do you think the developing economy is affecting, you know, in terms of East Asian languages, indigenous languages, European languages? What are your thoughts on this? Maybe let's start with Kelly.
Well, I think definitely for very popular language pairs, it can almost feel a little troubling sometimes knowing that there is so much competition in the job market. But that being said, it kind of goes back to what we've been talking about almost all day, where if you're confident in yourself and you're assured in yourself and really are strong principled and know really the skill set that you bring to the table, I think that you'll still be able to find the jobs that work for you. I wouldn't necessarily say that the demand is so much increasing as so much we're more becoming aware of it. Because I think it's a little bit, one thing that I find with just the online platforms in general is that you have less to hide. Even if you feel like you're hiding something, it's out there. What's on the internet really kind of can't be taken back. You have your digital footprint there, so to speak. So, you know, there was always a need for these indigenous languages. There was always a need for people who maybe didn't speak these really big popular languages that people are so fond of studying, which they are great languages to study, but I think my mind keeps going back to the point of access and liking the idea that we could potentially find more qualified interpreters and translators for people who are speaking a language or know a language that is not as popularized in or has not been as popularized in the last 20, 30 years.
Mhm, thank you. And Laura, what do you think?
I think when it comes to languages, you should diversify. You should try to be able to work in more than one language and try to find like some of those exotic, but it's true that there is the heart and there is the market. So if it were for me, I would have probably studied more like Afrikaans or stuff, but like, what's the niche? Right? So it is the market will rule some of your preferences, but if you become like really unique or you have very unique combinations, you can also say the prices. So definitely nowadays, English is a given. Like it was a very interesting insight that Gary showed. If you know Japanese or Chinese, even though the competition is high, particularly for Chinese English, you have a leverage with AI. So you should be looking at different languages and as diverse as possible. That's a new trend. That is definitely a trend.
Mhm, very interesting. Thank you. And Daniela, what are your thoughts?
Well, I definitely agree with my panelists. There are definitely some languages that are more popular than others that will generate more income than others. And with, you know, endangered languages, for example, minority languages, unfortunately, a lot of people are not learning those languages anymore. I was recently in Ecuador. I just came back Wednesday. I was there for almost 3 months. And I went to an indigenous community called Otavalo in the mountainside. And I was speaking to some pastors over there, and they were saying that their children don't even speak the language. Many young people don't speak it anymore. And so that's another issue, because, for example, now that we have so many immigrants, for example, that are indigenous and speak their indigenous languages and not Spanish or anything else, you know, what happens to those people who are going to be the interpreters to provide services for them if so many people are losing their own heritage language? And then if there's so many people that are not speaking those languages, then where are we going to get those interpreters? And so that's also a question.
May I add something?
Of course.
And so thank you for bringing that up. I just remembered, the Quixote, El Quijote de la Mancha, one of the major books ever written in Spanish language. There's this story about the Guarani language, which is the other official language in Paraguay. And it's spoken in many other places other than Paraguay in South America. There is this man who is amazing. I wish there were more people like him. His mother tongue was Guarani, and he was bullied by the whole school system, beginning with the teacher and the classmates, because he had an accent, because he didn't know Spanish. So he suppressed that language, but he rebelled. He was called names because he spoke that language, and he rebelled. He kept it, and then he translated the Quixote into Guarani and helped it become the official language of Paraguay. It's a
Wow.
beautiful story, and translated books make languages official. So it's really like and also taking her words like language access. If you are an activist, or if you want that to happen, you could definitely get involved. There are many projects for learning and teaching or helping teach those and make them come back to teaching those indigenous languages that I wanted to add.
Fantastic, thank you. And actually that provides a perfect segue into another question I wanted to ask that's perhaps quite personal. I know we've discussed earlier today the possible tension between literary translation and more business-oriented translation. So my question to you would be, do you think literary translation will be affected by the growth of the platform economy? Do you think it would be economically viable to focus on literary translation in your language pairs? Or would you personally like to incorporate literary translation into your practice? Let's start with Kelly maybe.
So thank you for that question. That's an excellent question. I am going to go back to something I heard our wonderful professor Natasha Niakos talk about before. When it comes to things evolving in terms of the platform economy, literary translation is going to be one of the things that lives on. I mean, literary translation is just such a complex and dense topic that I think we could get to a point where machines could do basic business sort of communications or even legal, because there tends to be a specified format to that. But to really take the personality and ideas and really just the even cultural aspects that are so heavily embedded into literature, machines, I don't foresee the machines doing that within our lifetime. I could be wrong. I'm not a machine expert, but I think that it would be really wise to try and diversify yourself and potentially do both. Obviously, you want to eat, so you want to make sure that you can have some kind of practical logistical training in business communications, legal communications, medical, etc. And there are also instances where that is going to become a little bit more dense, and probably the machines wouldn't be able to detect every single little aspect that's, for some cases, life or death for a certain person. However, as the machines kind of progress in advance and we sort of become more just kind of co-planners with AI and technology as they take over those types of jobs a little bit more, I think literature is excellent. I think if you gravitate naturally towards literature, absolutely focus in it. I mean, the world is big and broad and wonderful, and you should just take advantage of everything. Aprovechar todo. Yeah.
Lovely. And would you personally be interested in this if you're comfortable sharing, of course?
Oh, absolutely. Yes.
Awesome. Daniela, what do you think?
Yeah, I definitely agree with what Kelly said. I think if literature is something that you love, I think you should definitely do it. I think you should also have like a main maybe job or sector that you work into, just in case, you don't generate the income that you expect to or that you would like to. But I think it's a really good place to be. And I think it can kind of bring out your creative juices in both languages, and it can be a fun activity as well. And so, yeah, I think there's definitely possibility there.
And is it something that you would like to incorporate?
Sure, why not? I would love to try.
Yeah, and Laura, you've already spoken a bit about it, but what are your other insights?
So first of all, to be, in my view, to be a literary translator is like the ballet of dances. Like you can dance anything if you can translate literature. I think AI can be a good help because to be a really good literary translator, you have to have read such an amount of different kind of genres and texts, and AI can help you with intertextuality and many other aspects. It can be a good aid, not the main character. That being said, I personally would love to translate literature. I have done it before. And I think we should strive for, if you want to be just so lightly a literary translator, it should be possible. I think there are many things that need to be changed in the status quo. I think translators should be on the cover because they are co-authors. They created a new version in the target language. They are not the shadow. They're not the shadow. We should be more visible. We should be on the cover, and we should get royalties, not as much as the author, but we should get royalties. So if that is possible, if we set our minds, or at least try to change the status quo, not like it was said like, well, right now, these organizations, they haven't done it. Yeah, they have different agenda. They don't exist for that. But why don't we change that? Then probably a literary translator wouldn't be hating to translate marketing and then translate a book. He or she or they would be just translating their books and be happy with it. So that is what I think. I think we should not conform with what exists. I think we should change some things.
Wow, very powerful. Thank you. Oh. And again, this is a rather related topic. Do you think that the growth of this platform economy that we're seeing will result in a higher average quality of translation interpreting in terms of literary translation, in terms of medical interpreting in any field? Will the quality be higher or lower? What do you think and why? Maybe let's start with Daniela.
All right. I think it could help. I think it could help. I mean, if we're talking about AI, for example, I think it can help maybe write a translation. However, like what we were saying, it shouldn't be like our master, right? It should be an aid to what we're doing. And in that sense, it can be helpful. And definitely with all the digital resources that we have, we can also easily access other documents to read to supply what we're missing, perhaps in our translation or interpretation, dictionaries online, and things of that nature. So in that sense, I think it can be helpful.
Fantastic, thank you. And Kelly, what do you think?
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
Yes, do you
Yeah.
think that AI and the platform economy, Prozee, Fiverr, etc., in general, will this lead to the quality of translations and interpreting becoming higher or lower?
Yes. Okay. I believe it's going to result in higher quality because, I mean, you have to improve the quality to compete, to be competitive in the marketplace, I think is really what it comes down to. Before, where maybe people weren't as aware of how many people were out there that could maybe do this skill set, then it was sort of, okay, here are the people who have this kind of experience that are around your area. And especially before really technology boomed and the internet kind of became what it is today, you know, maybe hypothetically, if I was living in South America or something, then I would be a viable candidate to translate maybe a book into English. But before then, if maybe there weren't so many people who were native English speakers living there, then you would have to go with someone who maybe never lived in the United States or never had experience with an English speaking country. And they learned through school and through practice, and their English may be very, very good, but there could be some kind of elements that could be lacking. But that being said, and I'm not saying that that person shouldn't get that job either, just to clarify,
Yeah.
but I'm more saying that we can collaborate at a higher level now because we have so much cross collaboration and connection, which I think results in just higher quality and just better sort of products.
See, thank you. And Laura, what do you think?
So just checking if I understood correctly, do we think if this new trend and AI is going to improve quality? Is that what you mean?
AI and also the fact that more translators are freelancing on Prozee, on Fiverr, on freelancing websites, so it's easier for anyone to do this work. Is it going to result in a higher quality, lower quality, same?
Okay. I'm sorry to be like this. No, I don't think it's gonna improve quality. Yeah, I'm just speaking my mind. I do think, and I agree with in this case, I agree with Kelly. It's gonna help set aside who the good ones are and who are just wannabe translators. But it is unfair competition. What AI and CAD tools help you with, and that's high quality, it's quality, not high quality. It helps you with consistency. But being consistent doesn't mean you are a great translator. So no, I think they just lower our wages, to be honest. So it's that's my view. The quality and the standards are set by us professionals. That's what I think.
I see. Professor, may I ask how we're doing on time?
We're doing very well.
Okay,
Yeah, you guys, you know, you breezed through it.
all right, well, let's keep going then. Let's see, so, do you think that right now we are still seeing a tendency towards specialization, towards finding your niche? Or are we seeing a tendency towards the translator becoming a jack of all trades? As a freelance translator, how would you want to develop your skills in response to this? Would you try to specialize more or to gain more knowledge in many areas? How would you approach this? Yeah, let's start with Daniela.
I think it's important to have a broad knowledge of different areas. And I also think it's important to also have a niche. And so I suppose whatever your passion is, I suppose should be your niche, right? I think that's something that you will enjoy. I think that's something you will enjoy researching more into, learning more about. And then of course, learning about other broader topics as well to be prepared for anything and to explore new fields as well. And of course, speaking to others who are professionals and experts in whatever it is that you're really interested in, I think are really great ways to develop your skill set. And that can also help you asset yourself as well and make you stand out. Yeah.
Makes sense. Laura, what do you think?
Well, it's a hard question, actually, because there are many variables. And I like this saying in English, don't put all your eggs into one basket. And when it comes to translation, it is like that. It is there are only very few translators who have one niche and they only translate for NASA. But those are just those translators and they get well paid. So there is the niche and there is life. Usually they go hand in hand. So that would be my realistic answer. Then the ideal answer would be, if you're a translator, it's because you like the code. You want the code to access many doors. So why not opening the different doors? And then as you go, you will figure things out. That's what I think, apart from like knowing what you like. Yeah.
I see. And Kelly, what are your thoughts?
I think one thing that we've been seeing a lot today is just the theme of a translator and an interpreter as a lifelong learner. And I think that will not go away as we become professionals, whether or not we choose to go in with a specific niche or not. So my answer would more be yes, that it's very important to specialize and have a niche and make sure that you can put food on the table and really like make sure that you're going to get consistent work. However, as a lifelong learner, read as much as you can, watch YouTube videos, explore new things. You never know where life is going to take you. And maybe you're a legal translator today and you feel very passionate about a different maybe aspect of the industry. Maybe you're really interested in makeup or something you never even thought about. And then a job can come up where they need someone to translate something for maybe Ulta or Sephora, and maybe you can submit a sample of your translation work and they could really love it because you have that passion within you. So I guess my answer is maybe a little bit mixed, but I think it's important to really focus and have a very stable kind of niche sort of thing that you can do, but never stop learning, never stop following your passions, and just see what's out there. Just keep working on your craft and talking to people, going to conferences, and be a lifelong learner.
Fabulous. Thank you. And Yeah, sure. We can open up the floor to questions for our panelists. What are the audience thoughts on everything we discussed? Of course.
For Kelly.
Yes.
So earlier you asked, to the earlier panelists about how would they study? And I'm just wondering, how do you approach, like, okay, Monday here, Tuesday there, like, how did you go about, personally, how would you?
Thank you so much for that question. So I get very distracted easily, quite honestly, and I'm very interested in a wide range of topics. So it kind of I go with really how I'm feeling. And if I'm feeling like very maybe charged by something I saw in the news, I will maybe try to find something in Spanish or English that would be related to that so I can learn more about it. But then that being said, I also have my own hobbies. I love to dance. I love to learn about fashion and beauty and that kind of stuff. So I'll read Vogue maybe in English, and then I'll be like, oh, but I wonder what's happening in Vogue Mexico. But I wouldn't say I have a regime. I just more kind of go with how I'm feeling, and I really want to continue expanding that knowledge base. And I feel like I know really just the surface of many things. So I'm very excited to hopefully continue to develop in that capacity.
So thank you. Any other questions, thoughts, comments?
Have you thought about this as a variable, right? We try to consider a variable. The variable of volunteer translation versus deliberative work, kind of work translation, or interpretation. Right? If there's a difference there in the way you see the outlook. If for example, if volunteer translation, I think for some of you, way back in the beginning, we might have talked about it in class, right? If that's something that is a detriment to the field, a threat, I think some translators think they can be better, or if you see it different.
Who wants to start? Let's see.
I work for an NGO for a while. I actually, if someone wants to join, they're welcome. Hello, yeah. I was part of an NGO as a translator. It's called Respond Crisis Translation. If someone wants to join, we translate for refugees and asylum seekers. So it's a startup, and they didn't have money for translators, but they are aware that it is a job, and they are aware that you need qualified translators because that lives depend upon that. Simple as that. It's not like something frivolous. I mean, it's bad. Any translation is bad, but they might not affect anyone really. When I joined, I had only thought of translation. I was already working as a translator, and I thought of translation as something that should be monetized. It's a job because not everyone can do that. But then you have that thing about helping. So I think it depends on what is behind it. If it is because they have no money and they're really helping save lives, then why not? If it is some kind of LSP that is cheap and stingy and trying to squeeze everything out of you because they just want to make more profits, then it's a big no. That's the thing.
Yeah, I agree. I think it depends. As I mentioned before, something that I'm really interested in is faith-based interpreting. And so it's a similar situation because sometimes there are churches that can't pay an interpreter or a translator. And so it's that thing of, okay, so I still want to interpret and translate in either case, because I don't know what faith some of you have, but regardless, I think that it's similar to sort of like a hospital. Instead of talking about maybe physical ailments, we're talking about ailments of the soul, for example. And so we want to heal that, and we want people to be healed in that way. And so I think even if it's not paid, even if it's voluntary, even I would still do it. So I think it depends what the cause is behind it.
I agree with that sentiment as well, and with my fellow panelists here. I also feel like it's important for us to recognize that, we all kind of have to start somewhere. And if you're starting off maybe just translating and doing it for free and really trying to help people, I mean, I think a lot of people here got into this industry because we are interested in helping people, and we want to help people understand each other and make our world better and connect and grow. So I don't really see a problem in that. I think also there is something to be said for kind of the aspects that non-professional or unpaid translators may not always consider that a professional translator would. So, I mean, I think going off of that point, then we don't necessarily need to be afraid of the volunteer translator. I think that there's room for everyone at the table, and that if at the end of the day, we're helping people understand each other and we're helping each other connect, and we're doing what we got into this industry to do, which is to act as a conduit between two people who do not share a common language, then, I mean, that just really speaks, I think, to a beautiful aspect of just humanity. And at a time where there's so much darkness and just so much going on in the world that makes people feel so discouraged, it's nice to kind of just see people having a willingness to help. And I don't think that we should shame people for that desire, even if their work may not be at the same quality as a professional.
Before I forget, sorry, what was your name? And you with glasses, I'm so sorry. Yeah, Mauro. Just a fun fact about neuroplasticity. We should all be learning things that take us way out of our comfort zone once a year. That's what we need to do to be good at what we do, whatever we do.
Awesome. Any more questions, comments, thoughts?
I would like to praise how articulate you are, how aware you are of your place in the world of translation. I think being aware that you can claim the name in the cover or a better stipend or payment, you have the agency, and the future is there in your ability to claim what you deserve. Also, I have learned a lot listening to you, and I'm just praising you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Amazing.
So the rest of this time is reserved for those of you who haven't spoken, starting with our friend here in the maroon sweater. You ready?
Okay, here you go.
I should disclose, I have nothing to do with the translating world. I'm just a fan. I'm
It's you everything to do with the translation.
I am the class. So I guess a fun language story that I have to share is just that we annually will take a trip to Mexico with some of our family, and because she is proficient in Spanish and I'm not, we often will walk around the road and people will come up to me and just start speaking Spanish. And I always have to say, entiendo, which I don't even think. I just think I understand more than I speak. It's definitely challenging, but I appreciate that I have someone with me who can serve as that bridge. And also it really does.
Escort interpreter.
Yes. I think it also means a lot to people who see to, very privileged. Taking the time to appreciate someone else's language and in a way that I believe to be very respectful.
Wow, that is a real language story, don't you think? And I think, Callie, you have your twin sister to thank for giving you that kind of real grounding in language brokering. which is what it's all about, right? Most people don't get that chance, because in the everyday life, of living that role. Yeah, this is great. You want to pass on who has a story? Who's next? Jeremiah, you haven't spoken. Here you go.
Hello. I have many stories, but one that sticks to me is I guess it deals with lack of language services to particular languages. I know ASL, it's a thing, like there are ASL services like medical settings and legal settings. But just in my experience when I was growing up, like being like 8 years old in the hospital or clinic with my mom or dad, like with my mom, for example, having to be dependent on for interpreting, even though I didn't have any, I was 8 years old, no quality, no professional training, any of that stuff. And having to do what, having to, I guess, be an advocate in that sense. When I look back, being in this role, when I look back, I think of like, wow, how come at that point there wasn't, a professional interpreter that would be able to, interpret exactly what the doctor needs my mom to know and vice versa. I think about that. I think about like my experience growing up with, having to be an interpreter and having to sign the paper as the interpreter, even though I'm my mom's son. I guess the point of the story is not having a quality interpreter that's professionally trained is and in languages where it's needed. It's very important to have that. So that's one of my stories.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Passing on.
No.
In the back. Oh, Maru? Yeah, story.
Yeah. I'm Mauro. I work as a medical interpreter at one of these hospitals at Mount Sinai. I think going to the conversation about artificial intelligence, AI, remote interpreting versus in-person interpreter. I think the in-person interpreter will never be replaced.
Especially when
Family meetings come about, and it's like very emotional, sensitive information that is given to patients or the family. As a remote interpreter would be like, they don't have that sense of what's going on in the room emotionally. Whereas an interpreter in person, I think you do, and I don't know, it's very different. You can connect more with the doctors. You can connect more with the patients, and I think that would never be replaced.
Thank you. This one is not so good. So I'm going back here to Carla. Carla, come on.
Hola, yo soy Carla. I don't have any stories about languages, but earlier you asked me why I got into this. And actually, I'm from Puerto Rico, and I study in a Catholic school directed by nuns, American nuns. They didn't speak any Spanish, so it was English or English. And in the
It was a nightmare.
in those parent teachers conferences, my mom always want to talk to them, but she doesn't speak English. So as a little girl, I was an interpreter between my teachers and my parents. And I guess that's when it all started. I realized that we need translators and interpreters. Unfortunately, back home, people think that being bilingual is enough. So finding a job back there is a little difficult. But yeah, that's my story. And I just want to congratulate you, ladies. I graduated from my master's 3 years ago, and I don't have the confidence you guys have to sit in a panel and answer all the questions. So congratulations.
Okay, next time I'll call you, right? Next. I got your name. Language story? What's the next story? Anymore? Okay, I'll end with a story for you. So I have a story, and this is many years ago, and of course, you know, the day of in the life of an interpreter, and I still do this now, right? You know, so after a long day of interpreting in a court, I used to interpret a lot in the immigration court, 26 Federal Plaza. And so it's one of those days, you know, it's close to Chinatown, and then I go to Chinatown and I play music until late at night. I play opera music, you know, so it's very long hours. And then it's late at night, and then we have to accompany. And this was in the sort of, it was probably like 1996, 97, you know, so it was in those days. And we had to accompany this older woman. At that point, I was a fairly young woman, and we had a guy with me, and somebody dropped us off, and the two of us were in charge of accompanying this woman to the projects on South Street in near Chinatown. And because, you know, this is how it is, right? You know, it's not safe for her. And lo and behold, there was an incident. So this is a story, sort of mistranslation, right? First of all, I just want to give you some background. And those of you who, you know, speak of faith translation. So the translation for the chant, the famous chant, you know, in Buddhism, you know, Namo Amitofo, it's more or less, you know, like it's sort of the blessing of enlightenment in nothingness. Right, you know, because that's the basis of Buddhism, right? You know, when you dissolve everything, you know, and detach from this earth, then you're enlightened, right? So people say Namo Amitofo, Namo Amitofo, you know, when they meet, and you know, priests would say that. So anyway, so so we got into the elevator, the three of us. Elevator is not too large, and then halfway through, she was going through like up to the 15th floor or something. The elevator stopped at, you know, the 6th or the 7th floor. And you know, these New York City public housing buildings, the door is very heavy, you know? So suddenly it stopped, right? Like I said, lo and behold, some guy opened the door and came right in with a knife, all right? Right? It was one of those stories with knife. And, you know, and when he saw that this was, of course, when they decide to rob you like that, they're hoping, sometimes they're as scared as you are, right? Because they're hoping to find only one person. Maybe they're afraid, you know, they're hoping to find me, you know, about 5 foot tall, you know, all alone. But they found three of us. One guy, two women, right? So he got scared. He was going like, give me your money. He was, you know, with his knife. And so our male friend, you know, who is the biggest and tallest, you know, and he was like cursing in Chinese, whatever, you know, cursing in Chinese, but then, you know, he felt bad, right? And then he couldn't fight. And this guy with the knife was closest to him. So he, you know, in pocket, and he took his money out and gave it to the guy with the knife, you know, the robber. Then next was me, right? Was me, and I was in the back, and because I was the shortest and I was all wrapped up, it was in the winter, you know. You know, it was my turn. And I have no money, you know. So, and I spoke English, I just said, I have no money. And maybe because I was small, you know, and he kind of dismissed me as a child, you know, without money. Then came this moment of mistranslation. So then this woman that was right there, money, you know. And this woman's very religious, you know, Chinese woman. She goes to the temple, you know, every week. She still does, you know, and she's now like 80 years old. But at that point, she was fumbling in her purse to get the money. She was going to give him the money, but she started chanting, right? This Buddhist sutra, you know, and she knows more than Namo Amitofo. You know, she was going and going, you know, and, you know, I think, you know, so anyway, she was going in this language, which is I imagine it is sort of a Mandarin version of the Tibetan chants, right? You know, in any case, I wouldn't be able to translate. So there was no it doesn't point to any moment of translation there, but that what it was is that it left the robber misinterpreting this thing as a curse against him, some unimaginable, you know, thing that he couldn't, you know, he just got scared and he ran off without the money. So we won in that moment. So that's my language story. Anyway, I'm so pleased, you know, and you guys didn't, you know, you stay all the way to the end. Thank you so much, you know, that you have all come to it and come on board and, you know, and this is in a way, right, you know, it's a moment of valorization for our profession, you know. So we'll see you next year, right? We're on to third year and counting. Thank you very much. And please, this is your task, right? Your assignment of the day. Take some food home. Please, yes, because there's a lot of food, you know, dessert and cookies and everything. Okay. Thank you. Thank you to the audience online. So I'm not able to see them. Actually, for everyone who sits, you know, maybe we should all take pictures, right? Let's take a picture, you know. Yeah. Can we just sit? Yeah.